Right, so we're going to get going with our webinar today, where we're going to be taking a look at assessing discussions. So discussions, as you know, is the name for forums. You might know them by the name forums, as it used to be called in Vula. And I have my colleague here with me from SILT, Chengwen. So Chengwen, would you just like to say hi?
Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us and feel free to
Sure.
ask questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chengwen. And yes, as Chengwen said, please feel free to ask questions as we're going along. You may unmute and just interject if you want to, or enter something into the text chat, and we'll be happy to address those questions. So as these slides are addressing our new platform, which is Amathuba, we do keep them updated regularly. So if you come back to these slides later on and you see things have slightly changed, it just means that we are keeping the slides up to date as things progress within the platform. So we will share the slides with you afterwards, share the link to the slides, so you'll be able to have that as a resource. So in this webinar, we're going to be covering discussion hierarchy. So in other words, how is the discussion actually built up? It's composed of forums, topics, and threads. We're going to be looking at creating a new forum, creating a new topic, and creating a new thread. And then the main focus is going to be looking at how we actually assess a topic. And there's various ways to do this. There are rating scales, there's grades, and there's rubrics as well that can be used to assess a topic. And then we're going to have a really brief view of the statistics that are available within discussions. And then we'll also point you to some additional resources that we have around discussions. So you're probably pretty familiar with the discussion tool, probably have used it within Vula. It used to be called forums and then was renamed to discussions. And in Amathuba, it's also called discussions. So as you will know, this is the area where you can have a conversation essentially around various different topics. And as we mentioned, there is a structure to discussions. There's forums, there's topics, and there's threads. And the conversation itself actually takes place in the thread, and the forums and the topics are essentially kind of hierarchical containers to house these conversations. So you're probably pretty familiar with this login screen as well to actually get into Amathuba. So as you can see in the top left-hand corner there, it's located at amathuba.uct.ac.za. And to log in, you would just click on the familiar UCT login blue button in the center of the screen and use your regular credentials. Once you'd actually logged in, you'd land on the home page, and here you will be able to access your various courses via the cards on the front page there. Or if you were aligned to many different courses, you could actually use what we call the waffle icon, which is at the top. And under that waffle icon, you actually have the list to all of your courses that you are aligned to. So let's pretend that we are jumping into a course, and when you click on the card, you will arrive on the course homepage. So this is what your course homepage may look like. And because we are going to be focusing on discussions today, the easiest way to get to the discussion tool within your course site is to actually use the activities drop down on the navigation at the top, and you'll see that discussions is the second item on the list. And there's another way to actually get to discussions as well, and that is to use the manage course admin link, because course admin, remember, will give you the link to all of your tools that you have available within your course. So we're going to go via activities and straight into discussions. So as we mentioned, discussions have a very fixed hierarchy, a very structured format. So a discussion, first of all, is housed in the largest container, which is called a forum. So a forum, you can think of it as a heading or as a category, and it literally is just a container for the topics that you're going to be putting into that forum. So students can't do anything in a forum. It's literally just an empty container, and you will give that forum a name. So you'll give it something which is appropriate to what it is that you're going to be talking about in this discussion. But at this stage, exactly as it's represented here, students cannot do anything in the forum until you actually add some content there. Then within a forum, you will be placing topics. So topics themselves are, again, a subset of containers. They're also containers. And this is where you're going to be stating what is going to be discussed in the actual conversation. So topics themselves are containers that actually reside within larger containers, which are the forums. Then within a topic, you will add a thread. Now, this is where the conversation or the discussion actually is going to take place. So the thread resides within the topic. And you would start a thread normally. You would post an initial message, and then your students would respond or reply to that. And that is how the thread is built up over time. You can also allow your students to start their own threads as well. So in other words, they can start a conversation. But most of the time, probably you would be starting the conversation and eliciting a response from them. So you can have many threads within one topic. It's not just restricted to one thread per topic. So you can have as many threads as you want to, as long as those threads or conversations make sense within the topic that you've housed them. So if you have called your topic a particular name, like for example, say week 1 activities, then all the various threads that you have or conversations that you have within that topic should relate to that topic name. So within a forum, you can also have multiple topics as well. So here you can see in this forum, we have 2 topics. The first topic has got 2 threads, and the second topic has just got 1 thread. And then, of course, you can have multiple forums as well. So here's an example where I've actually added on some information for the different forums, topics, and threads. So for example, at the top forum level, you might have some general questions. And then within that, you would have a topic where I've called it, say, tutorial groups. And then the tutorial groups might have 2 conversations or discussions where they're talking about meeting times and readings. And then there might be another topic within the general questions called course resources, and a conversation or a thread around finding journal articles. And then you might have a completely different forum where you've called it assignments, and you just want to have a whole forum dedicated to assignments. And then within that, you might have, for example, weekly assignments, and you might have your first topic called weekly assignments, and within that saying week 1 assignments for your first thread, and then maybe subsequently additional threads saying week 2 assignments, week 3 assignments. So in order to have a good layout or a hierarchy in your discussions, it does warrant having a little bit of thought additionally around this to make sure that it has a logical layout. So what would that look like in the Amathuba layout of the discussions? Here we have an example. So on the top right-hand corner, following on our forum, topic, and thread layout, this is what it would actually look like in Amathuba. So the blue forum area would be represented at the left top left. You can see the forum there. And then within that, remember that you're going to have various topics. So here you can see we've got 2 topics. We've got topic 1 and topic 2. So at the moment, the screenshot is showing you that we are actually in topic 1 because you can see that large heading at the top outlined in yellow. And then within topic 1, you can see that there are two threads. So in other words, two conversations going on there. And to access those threads or those conversations, all you would do would be to click on the blue title where it said thread 1 and thread 2, and that would take you into those conversations. So we're going to take a look now at how to create a new forum. So how do we set this up? How do we start from the beginning, creating a forum, then working on topics and threads? So first of all, we need to create a forum, because remember, that's the largest container. So when you are on the discussions page, if you haven't set anything up yet, you will find it's pretty blank and it might look like this. So it's waiting for you to create your first forum. So you would click on the new button, and from the drop-down list, you would select new forum. So setting up your new forum, you'll see at the top there's two tabs. There's a properties tab and a restrictions tab. So the first one that you come to is the properties tab. And as you can see there, the title is a mandatory field. It's got a little asterisk next to it. So you do need to give, at a bare minimum, your forum a title. Then below that, you can give it a description if you want to. It's completely optional. And then below that, there are some additional options that you might want to use. For example, allowing anonymous posts. You might want to do that for this particular forum if you want to. And then you can allow users to start a thread before they can read. You can also choose to have a moderated discussion, but that is quite a bit of admin because it means that you are the moderator and you have to approve every single post that comes through. And you can also choose the bottom option there to display the forum description in the topic. So if you have chosen to enter a description, remember I said it was optional, and you would want students to actually see the description, then you would need to check that bottom one that says display the forum description in the topics. Then there is, you can save and close at this point, but if you want to impose some additional restrictions, you would go on to the next tab, which would show you the restrictions that are available. So under restrictions, just so that you know what's there, this is where you would set things such as hiding this from the users, or setting the availability dates. So in other words, that start and end date. So if you wanted the forum to become available and then unavailable on designated dates, this is where you would do it. And then with those dates, you can choose whether or not to have them displayed in the calendar. And then you can also impose some release conditions if you want to for this particular discussion. We're not going to go into how to actually set that up at the moment, but this is where you would set that. Or you could make this forum area just for a particular group. So remember in Vula, you could do that as well. You could have certain discussions that would just align to certain groups. This is where you would set it here under restrictions. So once you'd set that up, you would click Save and Close. So that means we've now created our biggest container, which is our forum. Now we need to put a topic into the forum. So back to our discussions homepage, and under the same button, under the new button, you can either create a topic there by selecting new topic, but if you've also just created a forum like we've just done, you can also use the action menu, which is the little drop down list, the little downward pointing arrow next to this forum we've just created, and say add topic. So there's two ways to add a topic. So to add a topic, you'll see that there's also a number of tabs along the top of the screen. So we're going to start on the Properties tab because that's the first tab that comes up when creating a new topic. So one of the important options to choose right at the top is the topic type. So the first one by default, it'll land on where it says open topic. Everyone can access this topic and its contents, Or if you want it to be group aware, you would choose the second option, which is just for a designated group or section that you would have set up. Then the next important field is, of course, the title. Mandatory again, you do need to add a title to your topic. And then description again is also optional. You can add a description and decide whether or not you want it to display to the students. And then below that, you can see the additional options, allowing anonymous posts. Users must post before they can read the messages, and moderation. So those are completely optional. And then at this level, there is a very interesting setting at the bottom there that says rate posts. So there's a drop-down list there where you can see the expanded version on the left-hand side, and you can allow students to rate other students' posts. And there's a couple of options here. This is not mandatory, it's completely optional. So you can choose to have no ratings at all, or you can decide to have a 5-star rating scheme on the posts. You can have an upvote, downvote rating scheme on the posts, or you can have an upvote only. Now, we're going to take a look at what each of these look like. So if you had chosen the 5-star rating, what it means is on each of the posts that are available, you would see the little stars on the right-hand side. And there would be 5 stars available, and they would just run their mouse. They would hover the mouse over the stars and click on the rating scale that they thought was appropriate for that particular post. So that is the 5-star rating system. Then the next one is the up or down vote. So this one has a number in the middle and a plus sign on top and a minus sign at the bottom. And they would just click on the plus or the minus to vote it up or vote it down. So you can see that having a plus and a minus means that you can have a digit, like, for example, in the bottom example there where it's got a 1. But if a lot of people put the minus, you could actually get negative numbers as well. So this is the upvote and the downvote. And the next one is where you only allow the upvote. So in other words, you remove the negative aspect or the negative part of the scale, and you have the upvote only. So it looks exactly the same, except that little minus sign now has removed, and people are only allowed to click on the plus sign. So moving on to the restrictions tab at the top when you're creating a new topic. As I said, we're not going to dwell on these settings too much, but just so that you know what is available under restrictions. And it's very similar to what you had at the forum level. And this is where you can hide from the users if you want to hide the topic or show the topic. It again has your date settings, starting and ending, and deciding if you would like to add this to the calendar, and your release conditions and your group settings. So if there's any of these things that you would want to apply to this topic, this is where you would do it under the restrictions tab. But the most important tab that we're going to focus on now is, of course, assessment. And this is where you would choose to say that you would like to have this topic assessed on the assessment tab. And you can see here the first thing they're going to ask you in relation to assessment is, would you like this to go to the grade book? So you can choose a grade item. So if you've already set up an item in your grade book or in grades that you would like this assessment of this topic to be aligned to, you can choose from an existing item. Or if you have not yet created the item in your grade or grade book, you can say new grade item. And then below that, you can say what you would like to have this score out of. So you can choose any amount to score this particular topic out of. So on the next slide, we're going to have a look if you are going to create a new grade item right then and there. So in other words, it's not already in your grade book, it's a new one and you're creating it. This is what it would look like. They would ask you to give it a grade item name. So this is the name that will appear in your grade book. The other item below that, the short name, is completely optional, and you don't need to give it a short name if you don't want to. And then you can categorize it if you want to. So if you've used categories in your grade book, you can use those here, but you don't have to. This is completely optional as well. And then the next important thing is the grading, the points that you're actually going to be assigning this. So you decide here, what is this going to be out of? And then again, these other items below grading are completely optional as well. So if you would like to be working with bonus points or points that can exceed what you've already assigned, or if you would like this to be excluded from the final grade calculation within the whole grade book, so you're still going to be assigning it a mark, but it's not going to be used in a calculation of the overall, this is where you would indicate these items. And then again, you can also put some restrictions on in this section as well. You can decide to hide the grade from the user, or you can actually make it available on certain dates. So these are all the elements that you would need to complete if you were setting up a new grade item in the grade book right here. Then you can also choose to grade using a rubric. Now, we're not going to show you how to actually create a rubric from scratch, but this is where you could also attach a rubric. If you'd already created one, you would attach it. If you had not yet created one, similar to the grade item, you could actually create a rubric right here. So you would just click on that blue text where it says create rubric in a new window, and it would pop up a window where you could actually create your rubric. So this is what it would look like. You would give your rubric a name, and then it has a very basic structure that it gives you. As you can see, it's got various criteria on the left-hand side, and it's got the levels going across the top. And you could actually just, sorry, you could edit this. Right, so once you had edited this according to your requirements, then you would save it, and then this particular rubric would be attached to your topic. And then below that, there's an important setting as well. Under posts, it says allow assessment of individual posts. So if you would like to be able to add a point or assessment of every single post that a student might contribute to the conversation, then you would need to check this option. And once you had allowed that to be able to assign a mark to every single post, it would give you some options under calculation. So now, of course, there's going to be many, many marks accumulating or points accumulating because you have elected to mark every single post that a student will be submitting. So it's going to ask you, how would you like to calculate all of these marks that are going to be gathered in? So on the next slide, you can see the different options that are available. So you can have the average, which is fairly self-explanatory. It's just going to average out all of the marks that are accumulated. You can choose to have the highest score, maximum. You can choose to have the lowest one, minimum post score. And then you have these other options here, which is the highest on multiple, or you can have the lowest on multiple, or you can just add them all up together and have the sum of all of the post scores. So if you're going to go to that quite detailed level of adding marks for every single post, you would need to pick one of these, which would obviously come to your final mark, your single mark, which would be posted through to the grade book if you had elected for it to go through to the grade book. So once you had set that up and you now have assessment attached to your topic, you will see that that is clearly indicated underneath your new topic. You'll see the little icon and it will say includes assessment. So those topics where you have attached an assessment, you will see this very clearly on your list of discussions. So we've created a forum, we've created a topic. Now, the most important part is we need to create a thread, because a thread is where the actual conversation, the back and forth of the conversation is going to take place. So it's very similar to the way that you've actually created the other elements. And on the actual topic itself, that is where you're going to create a new thread. So you would click on new topic to actually jump into that topic you had created. And once you are in that topic, you will see a button there that says start a new thread. So remember that the thread is the actual conversation itself. It'll be essentially the first post that you'll be creating that your students will respond to. So click on start a new thread. And on the next screen, you'll be able to see that this is where you will add in your subject, and in the main body there, you will add in the bulk of your conversation or your first post that you would like to have there. An interesting feature here is that you can also pin the thread. So pinning, so remember we said we can have a lot of threads within various topics. If you always want this thread or this conversation to appear at the top, if it's very important, you can decide to pin the thread. Then next to that, you will see that there's an option that says subscribe to this thread. So subscription means that each time a post is made, you'll be notified that there's a new contribution to this conversation. So that is ticked by default. So if you don't want to be notified, make sure that you uncheck that. Then you also have an option here to add attachments. So if you would like to add an attachment to your initial post, you can do this here. And there's various ways you can do this. You can either upload a new item, or you can choose an existing item, which may be sitting in your course files already, or you can actually record either video or audio to attach to this initial post. And then the last option there, which is also quite nice, is it says post to other topics. So say, for example, this was a really important message that needed to be represented across multiple different topics. You wouldn't have to recreate this post all the time. You could actually click on that link that says post to other topics, and then you would create this post once, and it would appear in each of the designated topics that you had selected. So once you had set this up, your initial first post, you would just click on the blue post button. Now let's take a look at how you would actually assess a topic, because remember you've said that you want this to be assessed. So when you get contributions coming in from the students, how do you go about actually adding points or assessing each of these items? So remember that the topic which has assessment attached is indicated using that icon, and it says includes assessment. So you would click on the downward pointing arrow right next to that to see the action menu, and you would choose the option that says assess topic. So once you are in the assess topic view, you will see at the top, just to note that there's a button there that says manage columns. Now that's quite important because it gives you the option of what you would like to see on this page. So the org defined ID is actually the student number. So you can elect to show the student number or not. The score value, that's usually ticked by default because we are dealing with assessment and it's important to actually see the scores. And then you can also elect to see the percentage. So it will change, it will automatically calculate it into a percentage for you if you would like to see that on this layout. So you can see at the moment on the layout, we've just got the first name, last name, and the score visible. So you can add these other elements if you would like to see it at this initial stage represented in this table. So this table is showing you the various users. So the users are your students that you have in this particular topic that you're going to assess. So you can see there the first tab is called users, the second tab is called assessment. By default, it lands on this one called users, and it just shows you the list of your users and the topics which you have aligned assessment to and what their score is. So you can see the first one has no score and it says not yet evaluated. So that draws your attention to the fact that that particular user, you need to go in and assign a mark to that. And the second one you can see there, it does have a value, 0 out of 1, but it says draft. That means you have actually assessed it, but you have not yet released the mark to that particular student. So you can see that this initial view, users, gives you kind of a high-level overview of who has contributed what marks have been assigned, what you need to still evaluate, and if it still needs to be published or released back to the student. And then the next tab at the top says assessments. So on the assessments tab, it looks somewhat similar, except here you can see the usernames are highlighted in blue. That means you can actually click on the usernames and it will show you the different posts that have been made by this particular user. So if we click on one of the usernames, you will come to this pane where you can actually assess. So here you can see this particular user has got 3 posts. They're listed on the left-hand side there. You can see what it is that they typed in and which discussion they'd actually contributed to. And you can see there at the top, it says 2 unscored. So this is obviously a discussion where you've elected to actually mark or score each single post. So 1 has been given a score already. You can see the middle one has got 1 out of 1, but there's 2 that still require scoring. At the top here, you'll see that there's a drop-down list called filter. Now, this is quite useful because it changes the way you actually see the contributions from the student. So you can either filter by posts and have the threads and replies, or you can filter by score and you can shift all of the unscored ones to the top or all of the scored ones. So the filtering of the views is quite handy. And then you can also sort within that as well, having the oldest first or the newest first or the post subject. So if you're going to be scoring every single post that the student has contributed, all you would have to do would be to type into that blank little field next to each of the posts and put a mark in there. On the right-hand panel, you can see something called overall grade, because remember, if you are scoring every single post, it previously asked you how you would like to calculate each of those marks. So on the right-hand side, on the overall grade, this will be the big mark, the single mark that is going to come through for the student. So the first little icon there will give you an idea of the overall grade. And if you click on that, it'll open up a pane for you that will show you the overall grade, and it'll show you the usernames and the different marks that have been accumulated for each one. And then in the submission column, you'll see that the second item, the second username, has something that looks like a little call out icon. If you click on those, then you'll be able to actually see their submissions. On the right-hand side of this table, you can also add comments or what they call feedback. So if there was a comment or feedback that you wanted to supply to this particular student, you could click on the little pencil icon and it would give you an option to add your feedback, and you would click save. On this pane, you also have the option to use what are called the multi-action functions. So those are outlined in red, those blue elements, and it is set grades, clear grades, add feedback, exempt, unexempt, and email. So these are actions that can be applied to one or many students all at the same time. But it does require you, because these are multi-action functions, it does require you to select who to apply these options to. So you would use the check boxes on the extreme left-hand side of the table and select either individual students, or you could use the checkbox right at the top that would select all of your students and then decide which of these actions you wanted to do. So say, for example, you wanted to clear the grades of all of your students, you would select the top left-hand checkbox to select all of your students and then click on clear grades. So this view here on the overall grade is a quick way to apply, almost like a bulk edit, to apply multi-actions to single or selected or all users, students within their course. Then the other option that you had next to overall grade was something called view statistics. Now, this is one of the ways to view statistics. You would click on that little icon that looks a little bit like a bar graph, and it would show you a page where you'll be able to see certain statistics. So you can see at the top here that this has a tab called class statistics and also user statistics. So you can see statistics at two different levels. So by default, it lands on the class statistics. And here you can see this is just some very basic screenshots of statistics at the moment. This hasn't been a very active conversation, but you can see the number of submitted grades. You can see the minimum, maximum, and average. You can see a graph of the grade distribution and also the grade frequency. So that is overall as a class. And then you also have the option to see similar statistics for a particular user as well. So this is what a user statistics may look like. You would have your user names and you would have their grades represented there with the percentage and the graph as well. Once you clicked on a username, it would give you a more detailed view of that particular student. So you can see here that when you click on a student name, it'll pop up a little window and it'll give you the user statistics. And here you can see they're quite detailed. You can see the total threads, the total replies. You can see the different forums or topics where these have been made, these contributions, and you can see the number of posts that the student has made in each of those areas. So this is quite a detailed view of a user statistic. Right, we said we also had some additional resources and support available to you if you need more help with your discussions, and these are available on the SILT website. So we do have a discussions tool guide, which is available there. And we also have a designated page where you have resources for staff and resources for students. And as we are going through these various different webinars, we are adding to these as we go along. So we will provide you with the link to that. If you have any additional need for support, please email the SILT help desk. And if you have any other further questions or feedback, you are welcome to email us at amathuba@uct.ac.za. And the link for the resources on the SILT website is available there. And if you go to the SILT website, you will find an icon on the first home page. It's quite visible. That will take you straight through to all of the resources available. So I'm just going to check in with the participants that we have here today. If they have any questions or queries about any of the information that we've shared with you today around this, the assessment of the discussion topics, you're welcome to unmute and speak to us. But I just want to say at this point, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you too very much to Chengwen for being here